Hello and welcome to Dragon Talk. How are you? I am Greg Tito, and I am joined by...
Shelley Mazanoble.
Who is slightly dying over there.
I was just thinking of the story you just told about your wife. I was going to say that name.
You totally should. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We are joined by an amazing game designer who I have said many times, I believe, on this podcast. You are one of the few people that I've actually inhaled a gasp of breath upon meeting.
What?
I remember it was at PAX East.
That's right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. We were at a, in a hotel suite, like some after hours gaming. It was just my wife and me and you. And you're, well, what do you do? What do you do? And I'm like, I design games. And you had a little bit of a cool attitude. You're like, any I've heard of.
Games, so good.
And I said, it was at the time, I said, Risk Legacy. And you went, wait, what? And then,
oh,
it's true. I was enamored with that game. I still am. It's just amazing. And here you are, Rob Daviau.
Rob Daviau.
Rob Daviau, lead designer for Betrayal Legacy, which I'm touching with my hands right here in front of us. This is the very copy that I think we're going to play tomorrow.
We're cracking it open officially tomorrow.
That's
nice.
Right.
Nice. I'll spoil the whole thing for you right now.
No, I've kept in the dark for so many months so that I wouldn't be spoiled.
You really know nothing?
I mean, I know very little.
Do you know that it's about a house?
Wait, what?
Oops, spoiler.
A house?
Dang it.
Yeah.
No, I know very little. Just real surface of kind of stuff. None of the tricks and the trades. So. What would you, for folks who are listening who perhaps aren't as in the know, how would you describe it? How would you describe Betrayal Legacy to someone?
Or maybe even start with describing a legacy game, because you made that up.
That's true.
I made that up. Should I describe Betrayal at House on the Hill, or does everyone know that likely?
No, I should probably do that too, just for fun.
All right. So Betrayal at House on the Hill is a game that you make. That I had a hand in sort of developing and doing some light design work back 18 years ago when I was at Hasbro out here in Massachusetts. Yeah, it was 2000. It landed on my desk and I spent about a year and a half working on it. And it's a horror game. It's a haunted mansion, haunted house in a box game. It lets you sort of play a board game, but it does some things that are pretty different. You don't know when you start playing the game what the goal of the game is, and then some point during the game the haunt starts, which is someone usually snaps, and then you get this game where usually one person's a traitor and everyone else is like, oh no, they're gonna kill us. And there's 50 different ways that could happen. So the person might be a vampire lord, or aliens might be coming, or they might be a mad scientist who shrunk you down, and then you learn how to win. And there's two different sides, and you play, and there's a lot of silly death. Not serious death. And at the end, you have a little bit of a horror short story that you ended up sort of acting out together through playing. It's a real hybrid between a board game and a role-playing game. And that came out in 2004, I think. Shelley, you were going to back me up on this.
It's true.
And,
Confirmed.
And it's been doing pretty well in the line. I think it came out, went away, and then came back, and it's been a pretty steady game. So about 3-4 years ago, Shelley, at PAX East again. I should just hang out there more.
Right?
You get so much work from PAX East.
Yeah. Shelley and I started talking, and later that summer, it was summer of 2016, said, do you want to make a Betrayal Legacy? To which I said yes immediately. And then we had to deal with contracts and things like that.
Which is going to be what we're going to be talking about for the next hour.
Right.
How do those contracts get nailed down?
The contracts
process. between Hasbro and an independent contractor. We're going to do a deep dive into and residuals and advances.
The souls that were exchanged.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This is my TED Talk.
But yeah, a legacy game is something that was mind-blowing when I first encountered it, when I picked up. I didn't really know what Risk Legacy was. And it had this amazing sticker on the box. Before you even opened it, you knew it was different.
There's a reason for that. You told me, Rob, that there was a reason you guys put that very sticky sticker on the box.
The pieces didn't fall out, really, is what it was. But then
There's
we realized
a practical reason.
Yeah, well, then we realized we could print on it. And what it says is what's done can never be undone. What makes a legacy game, and I've worked on 5 or 6 of them now over the past 8 years, is some of the actions that take place that you do in one game change the game. So when you start the next game, there's some permanent changes to it. And you will play your same board game, 10, 14, 20 times, however long the campaign is in a legacy game. And your experience will be different than anyone else's experience because of what you did and what changes you made. And at the end, the campaign is done. And in most, but not all of the games, you then have a normal board game, which you can play again and again and again. In some cases, though, the game's sort of done. Like, you play it 18 times and then it's finished. And what it really does, if you play D&D, it's a role-playing campaign in a box. If you think about, if you buy a role-playing campaign and someone's DMing it, the characters are going to do crazy different things. Each group's going to be slightly different. And when you start the next session, you'll pick up where you left off and your actions play forward. I was a huge D&D guy growing up and ended up in board games instead of role-playing games. And so I just took what I loved and what I knew and tried to kind of put it in a board game box. But it's different because people are used to writing on a character sheet, but not writing on a card. And they're not used to putting stickers on things. And then in some cases, the big horror is ripping up materials that you don't need. Like, you don't need this card anymore. Just rip it up, throw it away, destroy it, burn it. People still get mad at me about that.
It was, and I don't use the term lightly, mind-blowing. That there was 4 people, people who had played board games for their entire lives, as well as even role-playing games, as you said. And the act of physically ripping something up is so freeing, but also so scary at the same time.
Board gamers are the types of people who will sometimes spend hundreds of dollars on box inserts to organize their components.
Right. So the idea of destroying your components is abhorrent.
Throwing them away or stickering or writing on them with permanent marker.
Yeah. But you...
Yeah, I totally get it. I mean, I don't sleeve things myself, but it's not like I just rip stuff apart and throw it away. But as a designer, I'm regularly making a prototype, playing it once, throwing it all in the recycling bin.
And you make good prototypes too.
Thank you.
Or Lindsay makes good prototypes.
My wife and I work together. She's a production artist, so my prototypes
they're really good.
Sweet.
Very good.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first started at Hasbro, I wanted to make a Clue card game. And so I needed 3 sets of Clue cards. And so I got 3 games from the company store, opened them up, took the cards out. And I said to someone else in my office, I'm like, what do I do with the board? And they're like, throw it away. I'm like, you can't throw it away. It's a game. So I kept these game boxes without cards, completely unplayable in my office because it had the pieces and the Clue pad and the game board and the die for like 2 years. And then I was moving offices and I'd worked there long enough. Like, why am I keeping these? Right? Because they're just cardboard. So it took me a while to get used to the idea that they're just cardboard and cards. And sometimes the act of creation comes from just destroying things that you don't need. It's like editing. So took that sort of crazy idea and the idea of betrayal and put them together to try to make a haunted house book. If the regular game tells you a short story, what this one does is each game you play is a chapter in a book.
I like that.
And hopefully it all adds up into your own little novel of the history of your own house. You're like co-writing a ghost story as you play. And I'm DMing from a distance. And
it does feel very role player-y, which I've noticed from watching people playing it. They immediately get into their character.
Yeah.
They just do. They just, like the very first time when we were in Salem, when Rob and I went on our world tour,
to Salem,
Massachusetts, all the way to Chicago and then San Francisco.
That's a U.S. tour. That's not a world tour.
Worldly.
You know what? I made platinum status, so I'm very happy with this tour.
There you go.
High fives all around.
And I was upgraded to first class on my 1 hour and 20-minute flight to San Francisco.
So world class tour, perhaps.
Yeah,
totally. World class tour.
Yeah.
But it was funny, like that group, they had only 2 of them knew each other, and the rest of them were strangers, and they were just totally bonded after playing this game together. Like they were exchanging phone numbers.
Oh no way! Really?
Yeah, it was really cute.
Were they going to continue?
I don't think they were because they lived too far apart. But we actually did see that happen at Gamehole Con. There was one of the group that demoed. They were strangers, and they committed to finishing that game.
Oh, no way.
At Gamehole Con.
Nice.
I think last we checked, they were maybe on chapter 8 or something.
They were on chapter 7 or 8, but they had a whole weekend left to go. Yeah, what happens, because it's a legacy game, is you open up and you're going to rip some cards and write on things and put stickers. So we can't just reset the game for the next group that comes in. So what we did is we played the prologue and then chapter 1, and whoever won chapter 1, we just said, here, you have first right of refusal. You can take it and continue your story.
Yeah.
And one person, a few groups would be like, oh no, I'm going to start with my own group. And then, someone always wanted it. So they just got a free game that they had started. And in this case, it was 3 people that I think 2 of them knew each other and the third one didn't. And they just said, oh, we're in this together. And they went to play 14 games in a weekend. I wonder how that ended.
I know. I wonder if they're still friends.
Murdered each other in the game.
They're still playing right now.
They're still playing.
They quit their jobs.
Yeah.
They're still stuck in the game hole.
Sheraton in Madison, Wisconsin.
That's awesome. So you I've mentioned you played D&D for a long time. When was your first experience playing Dungeons and Dragons?
It was July of 1981.
Ooh.
I like that you remember the month too.
I was at summer camp. I just finished 5th grade. None of my friends were around. I guess I was moping and just sort of a miserable preteen. And I remember my parents came. Then one night they just sat me down and said, "Yeah, well, we made plans. You're going to summer, 2 weeks of overnight summer camp," and didn't give me a choice. And I was like, "Yeah, actually, that sounds fun. Thank you." Like it was like that long from between the outrage of having someone plan my life to, "Yeah, it sounds like a great idea." And I went to 2 weeks of camp, and there were some people playing D&D, except none of them had their books or dice, so they were basically just doing interactive storytelling and calling it D&D.
Okay.
And I walked up and they would just be walking around having these conversations. What are you doing? And they're like, oh, do you want to be part of this? And name a character. I was like, wait, what? And it blew my mind. I went there, and also I was allowed to bring 5 comic books. And that's when I also fell in love with comic books. So those 2 weeks pretty much set my career.
Nice. That's crazy. It's kind of like, what is it? One Crazy Summer, or no, One Hot American Summer, Wet Hot American Summer. There's a subplot where they're playing Dungeons and Dragons-ish.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about Wet Hot American Summer is it takes place in Waterville, Maine, which is the town I grew up in.
No way, really?
Yeah. So there's no actual camps in Waterville, but it's the biggest town. It's like 18,000 people. All the camps are around it on lakes, and I guess one of the writers went to camp outside, and going into Waterville was a big deal because you could play miniature golf and get an ice cream sundae or whatever they would do as counselors.
Exactly what I picture Maine.
Isn't that,
yes.
Yeah.
It's what happens when you go into town.
Soft serve ice cream, and there was a batting cage and a bunch of stuff. I mean, they were counselors, so they were doing other things, but that's as the campers, that's what you would do to go in.
Right.
So yeah, there's that scene where they go into Waterville in the movie, and then it just surreal turns into just like a heroin bender or something.
And then they all get back. And like, yeah, that's what I'm imagining when you said, oh, we're going to town. Like, oh, that's what happened every single time.
Yeah, it was pretty much like that growing up. Yeah, so it was 1981, and I came back, and I'm like, I got to buy this, and I got it, and I realized there's all these rules and dice, and I got the basic set, and then I remember the first module I bought was A2.
If Perkins was here, he'd be able to say, like, oh, it was so-and-so.
Oh, it's the Slave Lord series, and
okay.
I'm drawing a blank now as to Stockade of the Slave Lords, I think.
Right.
And I got really confused. I opened it up, and it had tournament play rules and non-tournament play rules, and it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So Elf wasn't a class, but it was a race, and you could be like and it was very confusing to 11-year-old me. But I figured it all out. So
were you the dungeon master or the player?
Most of the time I was a dungeon master, and I pretty much that's what started me being a game designer, because God bless first edition. I love it to death, but it makes no sense. I mean, people were inventing a genre, and so, everything was just designed by edition, like add a new system on. I want to be able to grapple and pummel and overbear, and they all work differently.
Yeah.
And so there were, we were like 12 years old, 13. I was playing with my brothers and his friends and my friends, and they were younger. And I was constantly having to adjudicate and come up with rules. And, oh, okay, here's how it works. So, like, you roll this, and after you get 3 14s or higher, then you escape from the trap, and you get a bonus for your dexterity. And I was basically improv game designing on the fly. I was like freeform jazz game design. And again, I just basically I realized, like, oh, it encouraged me to make up game systems. And that's what got me kind of started at some level.
I've heard that a lot when people say they played D&D when they were a kid, and a lot of it has to do with that word. And as a game designer, maybe you can talk about it a little bit more. It's like, what is your definition for what a game system is, and how it works? Because that's something like it comes up a lot, and I kind of know what it is from being around it and being around game designers and talking about it. But you might be the person. I've never
tried to define it. I think the way I use it as a game system is it's not just one game. right? Like if you have Axis and Allies, that's a game, but the Axis and Allies game system spans 4 or 5 different products. So for me, as a system is a set of rules like an Axis and Allies or Risk or whatever that can be used in various sub-products. And they may not be identical, but they're close enough that if you played one, you can pick up the other pretty quickly. There's like Richard Borg has a bunch of miniatures games under the Command and Colors system, and each one is different. They take place in different, like genres, and some are complicated and some are simple, but playing one leads to another. So Dungeons and Dragons is a game system, but you can play low level or high level, or you can make it like the D20 is a system engine.
Right, but then there's also the subset of like a system within a game, like experience points, for example, is like a closed system within a game.
Is a closed? Yeah, I mean, I don't know if anyone has codified all this into some sort of universal language, but yeah, there is a system within a game. Oh, here's the combat system.
Yeah.
But if I use the word game system, I'm referring to this very broad thing. But if I say, well, here's the combat system and the experience and the treasure system, they're all sort of little subroutines.
Yeah, which interact together, and that's I think that's why D&D is so enduringly popular, is because there's all these different systems that some players latch onto some. Like, I mean, Shelley, you've said that you really love Magic. You love being a Magic user. You don't necessarily love the combat system as much because, I don't know, reasons, but you love the Magic system.
I do like to blow things up.
You like to blow things up, right?
I do.
So a game like Betrayal Legacy might have different systems that interact like that. Is that right?
Yeah, there's 2 big things in this game. Moving around. Well, there's moving, fighting. Fighting is part of the action system, but it's a very specific part of the action system. So it has more rules and more like subroutines that go on there. When you move, you end up like with rules for discovery. It's almost like when you think of a rule book, when you get to the subheader, like on your turn, you can do this and this. Okay, those are systems. And it's like discovering a new room. Well, that's a little subroutine. Drawing cards. That's a system that's in there. And it's weird when I'm designing games, I often leave some of them just placeholder or blank, which I think freaks people out. Like, oh, and then there'll be combat. I haven't figured it out. So just roll a 6-sider and high roll wins. So like, is that it? I'm like, no, that's it for now, because I'm testing moving. And I know there'll be combat, but I don't really care yet, other than there'll be combat, and that's not today's concern. And then I get moving kind of working, and then I test combat, and then I realize moving doesn't work. And I sort of design things somewhat integrated, but if you try to make everything work perfectly at the beginning, none of it's going to work. And then you can't figure out what's working and what's not. So I do these little isolation tests on different parts of it.
Right. Almost like a scientific method experiment, right? Of like, I have a control group.
Right.
Yeah. It's never that specific or good. I am a board game designer. It's a lot of, oh, this will work. Try this, right? But at some level, there's a system under there.
I think that's what science is like too.
I'm not that good at this.
Yeah.
I don't know. Put those 2 things together.
It's maybe a placebo, maybe it's not.
Maybe that's a Is It League thing. Nice. So you played D&D when you were back in the day in the 80s. Did you go and interact with it in 3rd edition, 4th edition? Like, did you get all the systems there?
I played a lot of 1st edition. And then I went in the late 80s into the early 90s. I got into high school and into college, and I became too cool to role play. Mostly,
we can tell from the scarf.
Yeah, I did some pickup games here and there, and I always liked it. But it was a little bit of like the like Revenge of the Nerds culture. Like the nerd culture wasn't a thing yet. So I'm like, is it okay to still like this? But I always had a soft spot for it. And then one of my best friends and I came up with a very complex, very rich adventure that we said, well, we'll make up something and play it over Christmas break. And it ended up being something that takes 40 sessions to play, and you start at 3rd level and you end up at 12th level. It was like a full campaign that we designed. And I spent about 2 years, like summers off and on. I have a lot of fond memories of he and I were waiters in Harvard Square. We'd ride our bikes home, and then we'd stay up till dawn, like working on this giant D&D project, which I still like. It's written in 1st edition, so it's like this. It's like written in Latin, basically.
Sanskrit.
Yeah, and we always sort of. Then in the mid '90s, I played that actually DM'd that whole thing. It took 40 sessions, and then played other campaigns and various things. And I was in advertising, and I submitted a bunch of article ideas to Dragon Magazine. It was still a print magazine, but there was online stuff, so you could pitch a bunch of things. And the editor-in-chief was like, hey, this one sounds pretty good. Why don't you write it up? I'm like, what? and so I wrote up the article, and I sent it in, and they're like, yeah, we're putting it in the magazine. It's great. And it gave me more joy than anything I had done in 5 years of advertising.
Wow.
And I still have a color copy of the check. You can't see it. It's right up there on the wall.
Aww.
My first professional game. It was like $86 or something like that.
Nice.
And I was like, I'm in the wrong profession. And what my plan was that I was going to freelance advertise, write Monday through Thursday, and then Friday was role-playing day, because I thought I can't make a living at this necessarily, but I can do it for fun. And so I did the part where I quit my job, and I did the part where I cleared my Fridays. And then I answered an ad in the newspaper to go work for Parker Brothers and got a job as a full-time board game designer at Hasbro with like benefits and full-time. So I was like, well, forget this role-playing stuff. I'll be doing Monopoly and Trivial Pursuit, and just took a side path in 1998, 20 years ago.
Wow.
Ended up a board game designer.
How do you get to be a board game designer without, like, how'd you convince them, like, you know what I'm going to do one day? I'm going to invent the coolest concept ever.
This is
several game of the years.
A long story that we probably don't have time for here, even with an hour. But
that long? Oh gosh.
Well, you have to remember, it was before Board Game Geek. Settlers of Catan had come out, but it hadn't really broken big here. Magic was the thing. It's still a thing, but it was the thing back then. It was about 4 years old, and people could see that it had some legs.
Yeah.
And I applied actually to be a copywriter for Parker Brothers, doing box bottom copy and sell sheets and things like that, and rules editing. And I really didn't want to do that, but I thought, oh, wow, I'm freelancing. I'll go in and maybe I can get it as a part-time gig if it doesn't sound fun. And somewhere along the line, my resume went to the game design department, where they were looking for someone who liked game design but had a writing background to do Trivial Pursuit and Taboo, anything that had what we called cardware, those boxes of cards with all the stuff that was in there.
Yeah.
So bridging between writing, but thinking of writing for like game content. You know, is this too hard a question? Is this too easy? What's the terminology? And Hasbro had gone through one of its many moves at the time. So they're looking to fill like 40 or 50 people. So no one bothered. They called to say I had an interview, but no one bothered to say for a different position than you applied for.
Oh.
So I show up at the interview, and I'm being interviewed with people, and I'm literally thinking, wait, this is for a game design job. This is not for the writing job. I've done improv acting. I just yes and my way right into a full-time position.
Oh
now,
my God.
In retrospect, I had done everything in my life to get ready for that interview. Like I was running tables at D&D tables at conventions at 12. Like local conventions. Wow. And I had written this whole big thing, and I had played a lot of board games, and I had this background, and I had done writing, and I knew Trivial Pursuit, and Star Wars Episode 1 was about to come out, and I was a big Star Wars fan. So I was exactly everything that they needed, but I just used the ability to not panic to convince them of that. And then I just had this accidental Hail Mary pass. I was talking to this guy, Mike Gray, since retired. Wonderful guy. And he said, oh, what are some games you played as a kid? I said, I played Clue. I play Monopoly. I know all the stuff you make, but some games I played as a kid. Played a trick-taking game called Dragon Master, which really showed me what trick-taking games could be. I played a maze-building game called Pathfinder, which was sort of abstract. And I played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. And Mike's next words were, I worked on all those games. When can you start? Oh. And the other person in the interview was like, no, Mike, that's not how it happens. I said, I work for myself. I can start tomorrow, whenever you want to do it. He's like, great. And like, that was it. Like, I basically managed to guess 3 games that he had worked on.
Nice.
And just pulled them out. I think I likely would have gotten it without that, but that certainly sealed the deal. And then I started working. My first project was Monopoly Looney Tunes. So this was back when Hasbro just figured out that they could make Monopoly whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There'd been a Monopoly Star Wars the year before for the like 20th anniversary where they re-released all the films, and that had gone really well. And they're like, hey, we should do one of these a year.
Why not?
Or more.
When was this? When did you start at Hasbro?
98. November of 98.
Yeah, I think I have that Monopoly Star Wars still. I think I've moved with it my entire life.
I have it somewhere. I had gotten it the year before, and I was like, I forgot how much I like board games too. Like maybe there's, I started playing some more board games in addition to the role playing, but I just had the ratio reversed of how I was going to make a living.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So basically, your experience being at a dungeon master and making up rules on the fly allowed you to go into an interview and be like, "Oh, the rules have changed. I'm just gonna run it."
That's a sign of a good dungeon master.
Keep everyone involved. Okay, we haven't gone back to you for a while. Okay, so and just keep everyone excited. Yeah, no, I mean that DMing served me very well for my 14 years at Hasbro whenever I had to present in front of management. I don't know if you two ever do that directly at these line reviews or other people do it, but
yes.
it was DMing, right? It's basically the equivalent of you walk up to the front and you're like an old man comes up to you in the tavern and someone goes, "I kill him," and you're like, "What?" Like that's it's like that. Like It's the meeting equivalent of that. Like, no, you're supposed to talk to him. He was going to give you the quest. Like you would walk in and have a game. So I'm like, "Why is it green?" And you just have to.
They went to the right. They were supposed to go left.
It's like your dungeon master.
Get the party back on track. DMing has helped me so much.
That's awesome.
In terms of managing chaos and trying to get everyone back, both getting them back to where I thought they would be, but also bending, where I thought they should be to where they want to go, and like finding that middle ground.
Why was it green though? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, why?
I don't know why. It was just, that was. I don't want to get in and start. You work for Hasbro, so I'm not going to get in and start taking my alma mater and telling these sort of war stories from presenting things. But
yeah. That's probably a smart career move for all of us, really.
So you were at Hasbro when Hasbro bought Wizards and with it D&D.
Yeah, I approved it. You're welcome.
Approved that deal?
Stamp
you were
of
probably
approval.
the one that was like, you should buy Wizards.
So
where was Mike Grace, who was like, "Hey, I worked on that game."
Yeah.
I was walking out of Gen Con with Mike Gray and said, this is when Wizards was at Gen Con. You had a big castle.
The castle. And say, those were the castle.
And he said, "You see that castle?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Next year it'll be Hasbro." So I'm like, "What?" He goes, "That's just my hunch." He didn't know.
No way.
Yeah. He was like, Pokemon's taking off and all these things and Magic. And he's like, "I wouldn't be surprised."
He was prophetic.
Yeah.
He was prophetic.
He knew.
That's crazy. I was there when Hasbro bought Wizards, and
the rest is
a lot of things happened there. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you work on Betrayal at House on the Hill? That was soon after that, right?
Yeah. It was about early 2000 to fall of 2001, and then Hasbro had bought Wizards of the Coast, and they did we had the Avalon Hill brand in my office. I got to Hasbro in 98, right when Avalon Hill as an external company had left, and Hasbro had it as an internal brand. So I was part of the original first 3 years of design on that. And then it went over to Wizards of the Coast, and we held on to Betrayal at House on the Hill because I wanted to, and it wasn't done. And they said, "We'll make it a Parker Brothers game." And I did all this effort to try to make it like a beginner version, an advanced version, and it was just I just wanted to work on it, right? Like I look back at it now going, no, it was never going to be a Parker Brothers game.
What was it about that game that you were latched onto?
It's the only game I've worked on that I still will take off the shelf and want to play. And I think it scratches that itch of being 11 again and being at summer camp and just guys are telling a story. I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It just puts all of these tropes together. And then this story emerges. And sometimes the story doesn't, it ends too soon or it ends too late or the dice don't go your way. But by and large, it works great. And when it works great, it works very, very great. I don't have a better word for it. I remember Mike Gray put the game down. And what would happen is it came in from Bruce Glasgow, the inventor. And he said, "Try this game. I'm not sure if it's a Parker Brothers game or an Avalon Hill game, but you seem like a person who would like it because you played a lot of role playing." And I played it and I got done and I was like, what just happened? What just happened? And I'm like, first of all, it's an Avalon Hill game. It's not a Parker Brothers game. And then I got to people like, you got to play this game I just played. And I played it like all afternoon. And it had some things we knew we wanted to change and some things that we didn't understand. But the core idea of, wait, we got a whole different story. And it just captivated us. And sat down and started saying like, okay, how do we get this to market? What do we need to change? What do we keep? What's the heart of it? What's the parts that people are getting confused?
Yeah.
And then like a year and a half later, there was, we thought for a while that Stephen King might be a sponsor, like Stephen King Presents.
Oh.
So if you look at so I'm from Maine, so I put a number of Stephen King references in there, and a lot of the characters had French Canadian names like mine. And then in 2001, Hasbro finally said, no, this isn't a Parker Brothers game, it's an Avalon Hill game, and sent it over to Wizards. And it was like one of the most crushing days of my professional life. I remember I came home and my daughter was like 2, and she's like, you don't seem like Daddy. Yeah, I was just sad. Like, no, it's fine. And I snapped out of it and, moved on. And then I saw it when it came out and liked that they said, okay, they got rid of the beginner and the advanced, and they cleaned up this rule and that rule. But what's interesting is in the core game to this day are still some leftover stuff from it being a Stephen King game. There's like a reference to a short story of his called The Boogeyman from his 1978 book, Night Shift. That's still in there. It's the closet event card. And then most of the characters had French Canadian names, and I think some still do, don't they?
Jenny Leclerc.
Jenny Leclerc.
Yeah.
There's not a k at the end.
Yeah, it's Jenny Leclerc. Jenny Leclerc. So that comes back to, and then if you look, like the birth dates on people in there are like a wedding anniversary and my brother's birthday, birthday. Yeah, like, and the hobbies that kids have, like, oh, that's my hobbies. That's my college roommate's birthday.
Dolls.
Like,
is that one of yours?
No, it's more
miniatures.
Cooking and baseball.
Oh yeah.
They're not dolls, they're miniatures.
I just had totally this conversation with Bart the other day.
That's so then coming back to work on Betrayal Legacy, it's almost like this
a homecoming
to the haunted house on the hill.
Yeah, that's why Shelley said, I was like, yeah, I don't have time, but yeah, let's do this. And
I still have the email.
Yeah,
you've got it framed and you printed it out on a color copier behind you.
Yep, still have it.
I knew going in, I was like, okay, the Betrayal system can be like a little unstable, and the Legacy game can be a little unstable. So I'm going to try to make these instabilities work together as opposed against each other. But it's a system I knew very well, and I knew ways to sort of tweak it a little bit to make it work with the Legacy system, and started working on a story and what carries on from one game to the next. How is it you finish game 1, and then when you start game 2, like what's the same and what's different? In a game filled with murder, you can't play the same character.
Right.
You can't count on playing. That's the exception rather than the norm. So how does that work? And what we decided was each game takes place a generation later, and you play members of the same family. So you're playing a family. The family is a character, and the house is a character, and then the individual people you play you're almost like the NPCs in the larger, in the house's story. And we got that worked out, and then I went out and we had this really cool 2-day meeting.
That was the best.
We worked out the story, and I don't remember how we did it, but the prologue. Yep. We just all of a sudden the prologue just came out and changed very little from that idea to the final one.
There was much screaming in that meeting. Lots of like, yes, this is so good.
I remember hearing it from across the room.
Like, I was like, one day I'm going to play this game.
One day I will
It'll be a rainy
experience
Tuesday.
That joy.
2 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually almost exactly.
Yeah, it was December of 2016. And then we had various members, various teams. We had some people inside Wizards and some outside people and some writers and some designers and some developers. And we spent from December of 2016 to April of this year working on it.
That's crazy.
I don't know. I mean, it seemed like a lot of work from my perspective.
Shelley was doing a lot of work.
Yes, so much.
You did.
It was I don't even know how. I don't know. I know there were many spreadsheets involved in meetings.
There is just a giant level. I don't know who these people are.
Hi.
They're new. Our next interview.
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Wait. What
we'll be
people?
with you guys. We'll be with you guys in a little bit. Luckily, I don't think they're passionate on sound, so they might be okay.
Ghost
people.
For us to continue.
Yeah, no, it's something about this game. Just I was emailing with the original inventor, Bruce, over Thanksgiving. He was saying, "Oh, liked how it came out." I'm like, "Thanks for letting me play in your sandbox." Twice now, for a year and a half.
Get on my sandbox.
And Just having a good time. And I remember most games, especially a game of this complexity, when I would get done, I'd be like, oh, I need a vacation. And I remember sitting and typing the last text I had to write, and I finished it, and I just got sad. I'm like, oh, it's done. Now, there was another like 4 months of editing and proofing, but there was no more creating to be done.
Right. Aw.
I would have thought you would have been thrilled. No more.
There's always more stories to tell, though, of course. But
more ways to have people murder each other.
Well, it has to be
we murder each other in this game?
Tito.
Someone
you
gets
and
haunted.
I won't.
Yeah, right.
We'll make a pact right now
to
never murder.
So I guess that's my question. I mean, there's people who have played Betrayal at House on the Hill. Does it work? Obviously, there's differences, but does it work generally similarly, where you're all exploring the house in that generation, and then a haunt is triggered, and then there is a good guy and a bad guy, or sides there? Is that how it works?
Generally. When the game starts, it's 1666. There's an outside region now. You're allowed to go outdoors.
Oh.
So you have the grounds of the house. But the house itself is very small. It's like 5 tiles plus the starting tiles. And then every time you play, the house gets a little bit bigger. There's these tile planks that come in the game. They're almost like a deck of cards, but out of cardboard.
Do not open them out
until the game tells you. Sorry.
He said with a pained expression on his face.
It's happened.
We've had some people, cardboard to punch out, and they get all the way to the bottom. They look at the bottom thing. It says, do not punch these out until we told. It's like covers the bottom one so you don't know it. And next time we'll pack them.
Key learning.
Yep. We'll pack them the other way. So that's on top. And they've already separated, and they have no idea which goes to which tile plank. So I like to mention it on every interview, not to do that.
Makes total sense. I was always enticed by the envelope in Risk Legacy that said "Do not open." Ever.
That
ever.
Yeah, do not open. Period. Ever. Period. That was me being a DM. You know what that is? That is, you walk into a featureless room. There's a lever on the wall.
Yep.
It's not if it's going to be pulled. It's just who's going to finally decide to pull it.
Yeah.
Did you open the
exact thing?
I've not ever opened that. I listen to rules.
Okay. This is
when they're about board
you.
Games.
There were 4 different types of envelopes. I don't even know which one you have, because I wanted to be able to sit here and say, I don't know if you should open it because one of them's good.
Really? Oh my
Yeah.
God. It's like the best. You're like DM'd for the largest number of people ever by doing that.
Yeah. One of them is, I mean, it's been like 8 years or 7 years, so I can probably talk about it generally. One of them is good, but only if you're there. So if you're chicken out and don't want to be there. One of them is bad, but only if you're there.
Oh.
One of them is like neutral, and one of them is just kind of bad for the world.
Nice. Now I gotta crack open that old.
We're gonna have to
copy.
order more copies.
But I told you not to open it ever, because 3 of them are kind of bad.
Yeah, but even the bad stuff in that game is super fun and interesting.
Yeah, that one was the legacy game where it was the first one, so I had this freedom to sort of just be a little goofy.
Mm-hmm. And Risk is so. I mean, it's a very well designed game. It's got lots of staying power, but not a lot of people like it. Is a nice way to say it. The actual Risk mechanics of how to fight.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's as compelling as the layer that you put on top of it, right? The layer.
I had done a number of Risk games by that point. I had done. You still have Risk 2210 AD in your line?
Yep.
Which I've never actually played. So
that's my game that's been in print the longest.
Really?
2001 till now, 17 years continuously in print.
That's pretty badass.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I got a salary, not a royalty.
Yeah. So Hasbro's making out on that one.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much they're making out these days, but I'm glad. It's fun to be like the longest game in print. So I had done that, a couple Star Wars games, a couple Lord of the Rings games, like a 2-player game, a couple revisions. So I had this sort of like toolbox of things that worked in Risk and didn't. And Risk did a lot of things really cool and really well for being the first of its kind in 1959, and a lot of things didn't age well. It's like first edition D&D,
very
which
similar.
I still love.
Yeah, there's. I mean, I as someone who liked rolling lots of dice and throwing little pieces across the board when you lose, I have a fond memory of playing Risk as a kid. But if you were to try to convince someone who's maybe not necessarily as much of a board gamer, which most of my friends were, to play a game, they never wanted to play Risk with me because I knew the system so well that I could just win, and they never wanted to play with it. But what I liked about Risk Legacy was that it changed up that dynamic. Like, you were very much conscious of being like, okay, if one player is getting too much spotlight, for lack of a better word, then there was ways to kind of spread that around to the other players.
Yeah, it really worked well for people who didn't mind getting aggressive with their friends. Like, oh, you're too far ahead of things, and we need to gang together and get Greg because he's won the past 2 games. But for people who wanted the game to balance, you could get a real runaway leader syndrome.
Yeah.
Right. They're like, well, it seemed mean to pick on him. I'm like, well, that's picking on people is part of Risk.
That's part of the game.
And diplomacy.
Yeah. And diplomacy.
Yeah, well, everyone should play diplomacy once.
Once.
Everyone who's interested in games or game design or the history of games should play it once.
I'm done then.
Very few people
tick that box.
should play it more times because it is just a rage-making machine.
I want to play it again with Shelly.
Nope.
See, I was a very loyal diplomacy player. I was like, yep, we're on the same team now.
Do you know what I learned, though?
What?
It wasn't really Ben.
Who was it?
I mean, he was terrible.
We're talking about
a
diplomacy game played almost 3 years ago at this point.
But apparently I know, I'm still holding on. There was a rule that Chris Dupuis actually misinterpreted.
Oh.
Which is how I actually lost my country.
Oh.
If they played because then it came up again once I was out of the game, sulking and pouting. It came up again, and they realized that they had played wrong. And that if they had followed the rule, I would not have actually. It was like something like we should have like bounced off each other.
You should have bounced, but you didn't.
But we didn't.
Oh,
Speaking of which,
took over.
Chris Dupuis, formerly of Wizards of the Coast, got that job because he was I think in part because he was the developer on Risk Legacy.
Nice. Yes, it all comes full circle.
All of it.
He knows all about breaking down your rules.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he was like a playtester. He had left Hasbro and he was a playtester, and he just took it and was like, nope, I'm organizing this. I'm doing this. He found all the rules loopholes. He like cleaned up he played like so many campaigns of that and turned it from a sort of shaggy good idea to something that could be released, that people could play without it breaking from the very beginning. So,
well, he's responsible for me losing my country in addition to all that good stuff.
Well, I'm not sure that was so bad because you got to be done with diplomacy earlier.
I guess so.
And
I was the first one out.
You got to tell a story many, many times.
Yeah,
you have
Greg's like, many times.
many times.
You just trusted the wrong player.
Well, okay, so it must feel good that this game's out in the wild and it's being very well received.
It is being very well received. The team is sort of scouring the internet every place we can find to try to answer questions or figure out where we left a little rules loophole. And we're finding some, which I knew we would for a game of this complexity, but we're finding a lot fewer than I thought.
That's good.
So we have our first general review of the whole thing on Board Game Geek, very top level. People seem to be really liking it.
Everything I've seen has been very, very positive.
Me too.
I'm very excited. You know what's interesting, though? It's been out for over 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And Board Game Geek is where I tend to go for most of these things. This probably exists someplace, and I don't know where it is. So people feel free to point me to it. I haven't seen one session report, like where people like wrote, in character, here's what happened.
I cannot wait. I want to see people's histories. I want them to take photos of the back of their character cards when they're done. I just want to read the family history because I think that is going to be so much fun.
Usually, like with Risk or any of these other legacy games, some group says, oh, we're going to document it. And then every week or two, you get like chapter 2, chapter 3, and you can follow along the whole thing. And people really take to writing these short stories. And I'm sure they will come. I'm just like, well, I just want one.
Please, just give me some validation.
We'll do ours. We'll put ours out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, we totally will. That's a good call.
I think needy designer.
Yes. So. Yeah. You're like, I need feedback right away.
Feedback, justify it.
It's very different than, putting out a book or a movie or anything like that you get like a instant gratification kind of reviews from it. I think people, especially with a game like this that demands, certain amount of time to be spent with it. People are just digesting it.
Yeah. And it's fine. I'm not really saying that I need, validate my existence, but I just, looking for all the rules, I noticed the other day someone said, oh, has there been a session report yet? I'm like, there hasn't. it's been like the usual thing. Did we play this right? Did we play that right? Does this item work? Where's this found in the rule book?
Yeah.
But then people are like, oh, loving this, having a great time. Question about chapter 6.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I mean, the way you've been describing it as this being this hybrid between board games and role-playing games, I think that's going to have a lot of appeal for people because so many people have, spread their time gaming with each other, in one of those two activities.
Yeah. I would like to say in this game that out of all the legacy games I've worked on, this one was designed to be the most replayable when it's done. So you will play 14 chapters, you'll play a prologue, and then you'll play chapters 1 through 13. So it ends with chapter 13, which is scarier than just numbering them 1 to 14, of course.
Very scary.
Then when you're done, you won't have any more legacy stuff in there. There'll be no more stickers, no more writing on things. It will basically be done. And then you'll have your own version of Betrayal at House on the Hill, different from the base game, 50 different haunts, slightly different tiles, slightly different rules that you can then just play whenever. And in fact, you'll have only seen 14 haunts out of the 51 that are in the box. So you have a lot more to play when you're done. You just have a different game than any other person on the planet.
Which I love.
Yeah, everybody's got their own unique copy.
Yeah.
Not radically. You'll have a deck of cards that'll be slightly different, and like the characters and the tiles and everything will have these little things that, overall, if you played someone else's, you would see some things that seem dramatically different, but you won't see things that, everything will be a little different. Oh, look at your dining room. Oh, where'd that come from? Oh, I've never seen that before.
That's super cool.
Yeah, so you'll have your own haunted house that you can explore. And I do like to bring that up because I think there's this perception that you're like, oh, I only get 14 games and then it's done. It's like, well, no, you kind of wear it in you tell a story for 14 games. You tell your own ghost story, your own history of the house, and then it picks up like just where the other one was, like in a haunted house on a hill.
That's
and
amazing.
It's also probably important to note that you don't have to have played the original one to play this version. You don't have to know anything about the first
you don't.
version.
If you haven't played the original and you haven't played a legacy game before, just take some time to read the rules carefully or poke around or I think there's a video of how to play. Who did the how to play video?
Geek and Sundry.
Geek and Sundry.
Nice.
Because there's some things you do that are permanent changes. Like you don't open everything at the beginning. Like you're going to do things as you go on. Think of it as a little bit. You get a little bit of it at a time.
Yep. A guided.
But you don't need to play it. Like we assume that many people have played the original or played a legacy game, but we tried to write the rules assuming that you had played neither.
That's
if you have played it before, at the beginning of the book, we highlight the 10 big things that are different from the original game. It's not everything, but it's 10. Please still do read the rule book because there's other little tiny things in there, but you can sort of get the glossary or the highlights and go, okay, and then be up and running pretty quickly.
That's awesome. I can't wait. I can't wait for more people to get in there. And maybe part of the reason folks haven't been writing or publishing so much of that stuff is it's still they don't want to spoil anything. Just like me,
it's hard.
I didn't want to get spoiled. Being in the same room with you guys.
I'm not really sort of complaining about it so much as just saying it's an interesting thing because it was just brought up yesterday. Like the writers and designers and developers were all talking about, did we get this right? Did we get this? Oh yeah, it's here in the rule book. We did cover this. And like even now I got an email from the head developer today. He goes, wait, I just figured out in free play this one card might break this one haunt if this happened. And I'm like, okay, so you're in free play. You have to draw this card. This card has to be drawn on this floor. You have to be playing this haunt, and this has to be here. He's like, yeah, I just thought of it yesterday that we missed that.
I wonder how did you miss that? Crazy.
I'm like, we thought about it. We're like, actually, it doesn't break it. It just makes it a little suboptimal. So, but we're building an FAQ for stuff like that.
That's amazing. Yeah, and that's very much like a first edition D&D thing, right? They're like, all right, here's a corner case.
But here it is, the whole team. Like we're done, it's out. We should be moving on to other projects, and we're still like brainstorming about like things we might have missed. So it's a real passion project for us.
That's true. I love it.
Yeah.
Do you think? I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, but do you think there's a way to serialize this experience?
Oh, do a sequel to this?
Yeah, I mean you've done that with Pandemic Legacy 1 and 2.
Shelley, did you pay him to do that?
Swear to God, I didn't.
I mean, it begs the question, right? You're like, oh, here's a continuous story, and you have a thing at the end.
Probably gonna ask the question.
Yeah.
I
very, very busy right now, but Shelley and I in the new year will talk about other projects we might work together or might not work together. And I've got a lot going on. And what I've learned to do is just say, not right now, I'm too busy. Because if I say yes, and then another project starts and my old projects aren't done, like I just need to take the holidays off and get my head together. But I enjoyed working on this tremendously.
That's awesome.
And it shows because it's beautiful. And I actually do spend a lot of time going through Twitter and searching Betrayal Legacy, which like a lot of tweets come up that have nothing to do with this game, which just happen to have the words betrayal and legacy in them.
I learned to put it in quotes.
Yes, that is also very helpful. But there was, I even kept a little diary of all of the really good ones that people have talked about Betrayal Legacy. I'm going to do a little reading for you now. This one was one of my favorites. As the first one killed, I greatly enjoyed the prologue in Betrayal Legacy. It was the most fun I've had watching everyone else freak out.
They were the first ones killed?
Which I also like, because there is, because sometimes you die, and then you're like, well, great, guess I'll just sit here and watch. But this is a good one it's okay.
Yeah.
You're still going to have a lot of fun. Betrayal Legacy is amazing. I don't think I've ever had so much fun playing a game, and that was just the prologue. Rob and Avalon Hill are monsters, and I love them for it. So I take that as a compliment.
That is true. That's actually true. You can tell by my scarf.
Holy crap, that first one in Betrayal Legacy is simply the best. Looking forward to the next match. You're so lucky for tomorrow, Tito.
Because I don't even know.
Because you don't know things.
But I will be singing Simply the Best.
You will. Oh, and here's a good one. Everyone else should just stop making legacy board games because Betrayal Legacy is by far the most intuitive and effective application of the concept. So you are free now, Rob. You're done.
Yes! Children's card games from here on out.
Oh, we'll take some of those.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Yes. So
awesome.
Anyway, there's tons of good reviews out there. So.
Right. And it's available everywhere. You buy games now.
Unless it's sold out.
Jump in. It's perfect for the holidays if you're going to be spending a lot of time with the same group of people that you want to be able to kill them over and over again in 13 episodes. Sounds about right for
the holidays.
Most people's holidays. Yeah.
It depends on how you really view the holidays. That may be spot on.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Rob, and making this game with Shelley.
Yes, thank you.
I can't wait to jump into it tomorrow.
Me too.
So, enjoy all. I'm sure you'll be fine. I'm sure your character will live for 300 years.
Nice.
And there'll be no problems, and no one will go insane. And you'll be like, I don't see what the fuss was. We just farmed and read books for 300 years. Seems like
and built a really nice house.
I'm going to draw the farming card.
We're just going to work on our house. Don't worry about it.
You got the special 1 in 10,000 game where none of the haunts are in there. It's just like, oh, it's over. How was it? You die in your sleep.
It was so sweet.
It was a golden ticket. It was so great.
In your sleep. Don't open this envelope.
Awesome. Well, thank you. We're going to have fun with it tomorrow. So
we'll let you know how it goes.
For having me on.
Thank you.
See you later.
All right.
Bye.
Excellent.
Let's just start playing now.
We're just going to open it up right now. We'll do it.
I want to spoil things so bad. Oh my God, it hurts.
There's a lot of stuff to spoil, and I can't wait because I don't know anything.
I know.
Then there's a wolf. Why is there a wolf there? We are going to take a short break and then come back with another fantastic interview. So be right back soon.
Okay.